Tēnei koutou katoa, no mai haramai. Welcome to the Script to Screen and New Zealand Film Commission webinar about Kōpere Hou fresh shorts. In this webinar, we're going to talk through the fresh shorts application process. First of all, though, I'm going to introduce Miriam Smith, who is the fresh shorts facilitator, and Jude McLaren, who is the talent Pathways Manager at New Zealand Film Commission. I didn't want to get your title wrong, Jude.
That's a crazy title.
Yeah.
Kia ora, everyone. So I'm Miriam. So I'm the one, if you send an email to the fresh short, you're going to get me at the end of the line. So I'm here to assist and help you with any questions or queries.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is the application process, the resources that we have online for you, what the selectors will be looking for, and tips for the application portal. And we'll also answer any questions, as I said, that you have, but you do need to post them on Zoom. Right, wow, let's get started. First of all, Jude, could you talk about why the New Zealand Film Commission has a development process and funds short films?
That's a good question, Jackie. We've looked at whether we, should we not have short films, and when we looked at that a couple of times actually, we discovered that how important we knew they were important, but we just rediscovered how important they were in terms of they're a part of our constellation of development tools to support people to progress their career. But they're also a really wonderful tool for helping people practice. It's the way of having a multitude of voices come through as well, so that we are encouraging lots of different filmmaking communities to be able to have an opportunity to make a film. It's also part of our process with the Film Commission Fresh Shorts. Our aim is to support people to get their films into festivals, and particularly the A-list festivals, and a lot of the fresh shorts have actually reached festivals like Toronto, Berlin, Clermont-Ferrand, and Melbourne International Film Festival. So, it has been a really useful way of directors being able to progress as well. It's a way of supporting teams. It's generally a useful way of people to practice. I think, and you'd agree probably, Miriam, it's really hard to make a film, and the more support you can get, and that's why it's a developmental process as well. It's hard to develop a film, it's hard to deliver a film, and so that's why we're supporting people in that way with mentoring and things like that.
And I imagine at the time that filmmakers would be engaging with the New Zealand Film Commission
through this process, absolutely. So yeah, thank you. It's a really good way of building relationships, and just for people to realise, because I think that sometimes the whole Film Commission thing can feel a bit ominous. And actually, we've said this a lot before. So Dale Corlett, who's the head of talent development, and myself, we started at around about the same time. And I think one of the things that's been really important to us that we're wanting to get across is we are just people, and we're here to support you. And my personal view is that the Film Commission's just a building. It becomes this kind of big entity, but actually talent development is here to support you, and this is one of the ways in which we do that.
I just realised I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jackie Dennis from Script to Screen. I also just wanted to introduce myself to say that Script to Screen is delighted to be working with the Film Commission in the selection process, and the development lab and the mentoring process, which is the part that we take care of. And then when the films get made, they get handed back to, or the team start working with the Film Commission in that process, which brings me to the fact that there is a different process this particular time for fresh shorts. We've got a leaflet, a graphic that shows this. So we'll just bring this up on the screen. And perhaps, Miriam, you can talk through stage one.
Sure thing. So this year, as I'm sure most of you are aware, that the stage one part of the application process is a lot simpler than in previous years. And we're really pleased with it because we feel it will be, you know, less work for everyone, but it also really allows us to still see into the heart of the project and give us, the assessors, everything they need in which to make the first short list of projects. Which, so I'll just quickly outline the items that will be needed for that, and we can go into certain things in more detail later if we need to come back to them. So as you'll see, one of the new things that we're asking people to apply with is a team video, which is 4 minutes max in duration. And this is going to be a wonderful tool for assessors to get to know who you are, your connection to the project, how you work as a team, like are you a new team or have you made things together before? And so it's not a big scary, like, you know, pitch to camera in the sense of like setting a mood and things like that. We really just want to see your authentic selves talking to how you connect to the project. So that's what we're looking for. And so we hope, you know, you can enjoy that process, and it will be, you know, a great honour to meet everyone in that way. I know the assessors will enjoy that, and it will be really helpful.
It's really nice. I've been an assessor who has experienced those videos, and it's really nice to connect with the people. And it's a great reminder that there are human beings making these. It's not just pieces of paper. So I think it's really important to have that human connection.
Yeah. So, and then there's the genre. So when you go into the portal, there'll be a selection of genres to choose from. So we're asking to please only give two, well, there's 2 genres max that you can choose. So whatever that may be, that fits your film the best.
Yeah, and that's just to keep it simple, because sometimes people put about 5 genres down, and actually it's not that helpful for readers. It's much more helpful if there's a clarity about the genres, and we you know, there's an other. So if you want to put something that's not on that list, there's an option to do that. And I think that we ask for the most dominant genre. So if it's a you know, a comedy horror and the emphasis is on comedy, then put that genre first, sort of thing.
Great. And then, yeah, then there's the log line, which is only 35 words or less, but it's a really crucial 35 words or less. And I must say, these things can be, honestly, sometimes the hardest thing to write out of your whole application, but they essentially communicate the hook of your idea, but also the kind of the narrative spine of the story. So people have this instant window into what the film is, and that can say so much whether the film stands out as being unique or, you know, what's inherently just powerful and interesting about this film. So in the point, we'll get to the pointers guidelines later, but there's some really helpful formulas that just help maybe a way in to explore how to approach these. And then of course you can tailor it to suit yourself. But I still find those things really useful just as a way to kind of simplify how you communicate your idea.
Yeah. There's a great touchstone. I mean, it's useful for the people who are reading your proposal, and actually it's one of the things that people read a lot, because that's sometimes how we communicate with each other, is in the log line. It's the thing that you might remember, so that's why it's really worth putting that effort into it. But it can be really useful to you in developing your idea, because you can come back to it and kind of check in with it, particularly when you've been doing some development. Is this the story that we're still making? And also checking that your log line matches your story. Yeah. It can be helpful. Yeah.
And then of course there is a script that we'll need you to apply with. So that is a short film script, or if it's documentary, it's a feature. And so that would be submitted in, you know, standard script format. There's some things about that in the pointers document as well. And of course the script is, you know, obviously what's going to express to us and to the readers and the assessors what your story is. So that's a hugely important document.
Yeah, and sometimes we get asked, why are we not having treatments? And I think it's quite challenging to imagine what the film might be like when you don't have a written script. And it's also about, in terms of assessment, like assessing the like for like in some ways. But your script is your blueprint, and in the end, that's what you're going to need to make your film. So that's why we ask for a script.
Yeah. And the next bit, there's a section in the application criteria that it says tangata whenua, diversity, representation, and consultation summary. So this is a really important area of application. So for example, if you are writing a story about a character or group of characters with a disability, we want to make sure that unless you yourself have the disability, you can write to that about your experience, but if not, it's making sure that you are making sure you're talking to a whole range of people, and so you're going to accurately represent that on the screen. And of course that's true for any cultural representation. So if it's a Māori story, have you spoken, if it's a true story that belongs to a place, have you spoken to people of that place and make sure that you have the permission or you're the right person to tell that story and people feel comfortable. So it's all those sorts of things. Another question I've had is sometimes people are like, well, what if I don't have, if it's, say, for example, if it was me writing a story about a childhood story of mine, do I just write NA in there? And to that we say, actually, it's good if you can still write something so the thesis knows. You say, this is a personal story, so I have, I feel like I can tell it without having to seek permission.
Yeah. And
so just so we understand, we basically need to know the history of the story and your process. Yeah. And so that, can be 2 lines, or if it's more complex, up to 300 words.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that stage, it's really, so you may not have undertaken that consultation yet, but it's really about, so if you haven't, it's about speaking to your plans and your intentions of how you'll go about that, so that we can understand that you do intend to do that, and that there is a consultation process, and particularly for stories that have either te reo or Māori characters, it's not just going to one person. I think that's really important as well. It's actually having a breadth of consultation. And particularly there might be a specific dialect as well if you're using te reo in your script. So just those are things to think about as well. And Miriam is happy to talk about that in depth if you need that consultation with her, just to help you out and clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
And next thing, director's summary, which is 300 words max. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, we did have a question, didn't we, about this? Whether anyone, do you want to talk to that question?
Yeah, is the phase 1 director's summary the director's treatment, or are you looking for something else in particular for this part of the application?
Well, it's predominantly the treatment of the film, and by treatment we mean all how you're going to make the components, like what is it going to look like, sound like, and feel like, and how are you going to work with your HODs, your art department, your DOP, and people that are important in creating the director's visualization of the story. That's what we're sort of wanting to know, and we'd like to know too about your voice. Like, what do you think that your unique way that you're going to tell the story is? And it might seem like, God, I actually need a book to say that. So that's the challenge, is actually being sort of precise and concise on what your treatment is. And so there might be some editing that needs to go on.
Yeah, and there's some images that people are up to upload as well, and Miriam, I'll get you to talk to that, but also just maybe you can answer this question that's come through. Mm-hmm. Can more visual development be submitted with phase 1 of the application process if it exists? For example, I have a full storyboard and some concept art for the project. This work helps show the vision, direction and commitment already applied to the project and will add clarity around the creative direction.
All right, I'll work backwards to that, if that's okay. What the application requirements ask for that would still be required in this instance is that we're asking for a single PDF document, but on 5 separate pages to have a horizontal image, 5 of them, that sort of illustrate the cinematic visual vision of your film. So these can be sourced or found photographs, or they might be things you've taken yourself, whatever best serves the way to communicate how you're seeing the film. And that really helps the assessors to get a glimpse really quickly into how you can handle a story that is cinematic and for the big screen. It's going to be really useful. So for those, we did have an idea for those, I don't know, who have gone to all that work, I know beforehand, before applying, the storyboarding.
Yeah.
And perhaps the way around that is, when you're introducing yourself to the camera, you may, want to
show your storyboards.
storyboard.
But that's up to you.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and I've seen this in a lot of applications, having read a lot of short film applications, it can be done to show the director's visual voice in 5 images. And for that person who asked that question, so you've got your storyboards, but you have some other material, and that may illustrate how you imagine this film. And it's an interesting thing, you know, we read the script first when people are reading, and once you read the script and then you see those images, and you can kind of reimagine the film through the director's eyes, because even in 5 images, that voice can really come through. It's quite astonishing. But yeah, so it does feel like think of it as a creative constraint. It is a limitation, but you can actually really make the most of it.
There was one about someone who's done some previous animation work, but what I'm thinking is, you know, like they can't upload it to the portal, but perhaps it's something that they could hold up or show in the video if it was really, they wanted to be able to demonstrate that they'd done work. Would that be acceptable?
Well, what they might do is that it's still, if that's the style of animation that they hope to make, if they had 5 images from that film, or, you know, that particular animation that expressed the beginning, middle and the end, that gave us a sense of how, you know, what that film would look like, or that director's voice or the style. But, you know, I encourage people to kind of think just a little bit broadly about it. It's a kind of do lots of scoping, look at lots of imagery, and then sort of bring it down. It's important to have a cohesion of those images, so that they're not all sort of different, because you're wanting to demonstrate that there is a kind of as I said, a cohesion to how you're going to present this film. So sometimes it can be the tone, it can be the light, things like that. The tone, I mean, not in sound, but actually like the way the image looks, the tone of the image, the colour, things like that.
And I think, just finally, I think there's something, sometimes what I've noticed is that often editing, pulling things out, really helps strengthen and clarify what you're communicating as your idea, like less is more, which hence...
We're making it harder for them.
Well, kind of initially, but it really... Are you joking?
Yeah.
It galvanizes their thinking, and also it helps, to figure it out, basically.
Okay, cool. Now, producer summary, yes?
Oh yes, so the producer summary, also 300 words max. So that's really speaking to the key, whatever's sort of particular to that project. So for example, it's a project that looks like, oh my gosh, like you'd think this is going to cost way more than $15,000. So if that's the case, you have resources, you've talked to people and they've offered to give some work in kind, or you have a plan for raising those extra funds, or if it's some specific location, have you checked, and you can say we've got permission to do that, or we've got this amazing actor who's happy to be on board. So it's whatever specific to that project that you can say, we're going to bring this is how we're going to overcome these obstacles, kind of thing.
And there's a little bit about things like, particularly, you know, I often the fresh shorts, what you want to make sort of often outstrips the budget. So it's helping us just, again, in a few sentences, understand, you know, how that's going to work. And if it is beyond that $15,000 grant, a little bit about how you're going to find the other money, you know, and I think we've got it in both the guidelines and the pointers. You know, are you going to crowdfund? Is somebody investing in your film in terms of giving you a donation? Are you investing in your film? That kind of thing. It's also that particular summary is, if you've entered Fresh Shorts before with this project, it's just talking a little bit about how you further developed the project. And if you haven't had feedback, like, it's a good idea to get somebody to read your film, and you actually need to show that you've progressed your film. So it's thinking about, you may have advanced a character, you may have reduced the number of locations, you may have a new team. So that's part of the development process as well. So again, just a couple of sentences in that area.
I've got a few questions flying in, and one of them is particularly relevant to that. What advice can you give to applicants who are reapplying from a previous year who weren't able to receive any feedback? What things should we look for when applying this round?
That's a good question.
So yeah, as I guess you were saying, sometimes it helps to just reach out to someone to give feedback. I know that the New Zealand Writers Guild, I think they have a list of people that if you're prepared to pay a certain amount, I don't know what the amount is, sorry, but they would do a professional read for you, or perhaps there's someone you know in the industry that you can ask very nicely to spend the time to do that. So, and also just thinking yourself, you know, if it's been a year since you last applied and you're like, oh, I actually think I could shift this character here, or now I see it this way. It's really adding notes to where you would like to now take the story that bit further.
There's actually a really helpful list in the pointers document, and it's the narrative checklist. And that actually is, that list is created from going through lots and lots of different applications and going, what is missing? So that's a really useful checklist for you if you're reapplying, to go through and go, you know, are the obstacles large enough in my story? Is it clear what, you know, the point of view of the story? There's a whole list of them in there in the pointers document. Oh, here we go. Brilliant. There we go. Yeah, there it is. And so you can utilise that to actually go back through your script, and you may do some further development, because it's an interesting thing that happens when you've been away from your story for a wee bit of time, and you might be working on other things, and it's amazing, the brain just actually makes those leaps, and you look at it again and go, oh, actually, that needs to change. Or you have more information about how to change that. So I'd encourage utilising that and utilising feedback. We are investigating somebody who has been a previous reader for Fresh Shorts to see if they might be sort of a gun for hire at a reasonable rate. I'm talking reasonable. So to give you some feedback, so they know what, you know, they've read for the Film Commission before, they know what to look for, and they're really good at giving feedback. So, and they're a writer themselves.
So you can always email me if you do need some suggestions, and I'll get that person's contact.
Yes, and if we do get this person on board, if you're on the Script to Screen mail list, it will be something that we will notify people of. Also, before this webinar's over, we'll show you how to find the pointers and the guidelines. So we'll get to that. But there are some other producer questions.
Can I just before we jump into there, I just want to say Miriam actually can't read your script, just to make that clear. So sometimes I know that when I was doing Miriam's role, people would ask me if I could read their script before they put it in for the application. We can talk in general terms about your application before it comes in and help you clarify things, but we can't actually read a proposal or a script prior to it coming in, just to let you know, just to clarify that. Sorry, Jackie.
That's all right. So one question is, are producers able to be attached to multiple projects or submit more than one application?
Yes. My understanding of that is yes. But if you are fortunate enough to have more than one project selected for that final 6 or the shortlist. Yeah,
that's a little bit challenging. We probably have to cross that bridge. When we did the development lab, we what we did was we said to the producer, and we did actually have this occur where someone was lucky enough to have 2 projects that went through the development process. That was at a shortlisting phase. Now it's a little bit different because films will be funded. So, man, if you get 2 films funded, good on you. That's all I can say. But and the thing is that we'll have to figure that out in terms of the workshop. Mentoring will be a little bit more straightforward, possibly. But in general, you need to decide which is your most important project.
Or could they bring another co-producer?
Yeah, and just about to go into that. And bring another co-producer on, someone who's genuinely invested and you want to be part of your team. Because we need more producers, don't we? The producer here. We need more of them, and so we really want to encourage producers. So yeah,
speaking of which, we often get the question where can I find a producer? I've got a project, but I don't have a producer. And so Script to Screen reached out to Sparta. Miriam, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. Sparta has been a really great resource, and you're very welcome to get in touch with me if you do want me to email you a bunch of resources about how to go about finding a producer. Actually, it's on the Sparta website under resources. There's this wonderful document that the New Zealand Writers Guild has put together that says tips for writers approaching producers 101. And it really beautifully goes through like just the whole process, how to go about it, and also how to kind of see it from a producer's point of view so that you can, get off to a really good start when you're reaching out to someone that you hope to be on board. Also, Sparta has really kindly given us a list of names and contact details for emerging producers. They ran a course last year, WIFT and Sparta ran this course. And so these are people that are happy and open to be approached with projects. So that's a good starting point. Well, also, if you contact me, I'll send you a list of, obviously there's all the guilds you can approach. So, that may be relevant to you. If you're a member of one, say WIFT or the Writers Guild or Directors Editors New Zealand. There's also PISA, which is Pacific Island Screen Association. Is that right? Artists. And then there's PASC. Sorry, because there's a PASC is the Pan Asian Screen Collective. Yes. Yeah. And so
Aho Whakaari, which is the Māori Screen Guild. There's a number of screen organisations that are there to support you and try and connect you as well. And we can try and help as well. But that is Miriam's. Freedom to be there as well as to help connect people.
Yeah, so if you get in touch with me, if you are, struggling or worried about how to approach it, I can send you those resources. And if you need a bit more support, we can always jump on the phone and have a chat about how to go. Right. But I know that is, it's a challenging aspect when you're starting out. But there is all these great tools to help you, and I know there's get onto it straight away because it's not too much.
And Miriam's got a bunch of questions which are good to ask yourself, and that is particularly if you're a writer or a writer-director and you're looking for a producer, or you're a producer who's looking for your writer and your writer-director, it's thinking about what are the kinds of stories you want to tell. And thinking about your own personal values, because it's a matching process, and you're trying to figure out what's important to me, what do I want to spend my time doing, and what are the kinds of people I want to work with, but also what kinds of stories am I telling, because that's how you galvanize your teams. You need to want to make the same kinds of stories, basically. Yeah. So Miriam has a list of questions and she can send them out, so you can think about that. Getting your log line, a little synopsis together, really important, because it is a bit of a pitching process. You are trying to interest people in coming on board your project and making the effort to make an application. So that's important to clarify that. So
right.
And I also wanted to, if you're struggling to find an attach and experience, or even an emerging producer, if there's someone that that has the right skill set, perhaps they're fresh out of film school, you went to drama school together, or it's someone that works in something like events or something that is really wanting to get into film. You can partner up and they can be a producer, even if they don't have a track record in producing films, but they just have to show sort of a skill set, what they can bring to the project. And to something like that, what we would also suggest, if possible, is that to strengthen your application with a very new producer, what you can do is reach out to an experienced producer to come on board, as often people are happy to come on board as a mentor or an EP. So that means they're really just there to offer you advice. They wouldn't have to physically attend the lab if your project was selected, but it would just sort of strengthen the project to know that there's someone that can be a bit of a sounding board for you.
Yeah.
Right. So what we might do now is put the graphic back up on the screen, and there's a selection process that will happen, but we'll just quickly talk through what will happen after stage one, and then we'll come back and talk about that selection process. Jude, do you want to?
Well, there's one of the things we haven't talked about is that there's quite a broad reading team. So there's really, clear representation of lots of different communities. So, Māori, Pacific Island, LGBTQIA, it's the Pan-Asian readers. So it's making sure that there's representation within the reading team, and support to make sure that whoever's applying actually has a good, broad selection of readers. So that's one of the things. So that team shortlists, and they agree a list of 18 projects, and they'll be invited to do the long application. I feel a bit guilty. It's probably not the most exciting invitation you'll ever have, but there's some funding at the end of the race.
I think that's pretty exciting, being invited.
Yeah.
So there's 18 that gets shortlisted and there's 6 that get selected. So at this point, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of.
That's right. Yeah. Nicely put, Jackie. There's a 1 in 3 chance. I like those odds. They're good odds. And if you've ever bought a lotto ticket, it's much better odds than a lotto ticket. So you've got to be in to win. Yeah.
Because we don't need to go into stage 2 in any great depth here, because we can do another webinar about that at the time.
Yeah.
But
can I just say that just for anybody who's, like, why are you doing a stage 2? And which we have sort of talked about is we do need that detail when we're funding, particularly with COVID-19. Health and safety is really paramount, but also, and we'll be offering those teams support in terms of, Miriam's conversation and support, some resources, webinar, things like that. That application is again, it's the same criteria that we're looking at, which is story, vision, and the producer statement and team. It's the same, assessment criteria. And so it's just more detail. It's much more detail, but there will be support to create that detail. I just want to, add that. And then there's even more support again when you're funded. Then there is some fantastic workshops and some excellent mentors that will support you to get to shoot ready. What we've found is that no film doesn't need further development. So we want to support the people to develop.
So I've got a rather wonderful question here. Where's it gone? Oh, Megan, you might have answered it. Someone asked if they could submit a script in Tongan language. And I guess what I was going to say is yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Translation, but yes, absolutely. A film could be made in Tongan language. And in those circumstances, we always have selectors that are of the same nationality as the school.
We'd have someone who was a fluent speaker and had a cultural context to bring to the reading as well. And I think we would love that. That'd be amazing. That would be, fabulous. So that's exactly what we do. We try and source the readers for the projects, and we would just, we would augment support for that in terms of our reading team.
Yeah.
Would you need it in English, say, and Tongan? So that
not necessarily.
Just for a translation, just for the other readers to so they've seen the story.
Well, that's a good question. I think we park that one and we can answer that question more fulsomely to think about that. That's a good point. But ultimately, we've had a script in the Samoan language where it did have a translation, but
we've got one that's Farsi language, and in actual fact it was submitted in English, but we were told that it would be Farsi. So yeah. I'm sure that we can
yes, we would need an English translation, but I don't think that ultimately that's the English speakers' problem. So if you've got fluent speakers, then they can actually understand whether that is working or not. Yeah. We'll cross that bridge. If we get a Tongan script, that'd be awesome.
We will happily cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Brilliant questions coming in, but what I want to do just quickly before we go to those is navigate to the website so that we can just show the participants who are watching this webinar how to find all of the resources that are there for them.
Great.
So the Script to Screen website looks like this, And under development programs there in the menu, you'll see that you can click on that and you'll see Kōpere Hou fresh shorts. And at the bottom of this page, oh no, you click on application information. And then at the bottom of this page, oh no, you have to read every word on it before you get to the bottom. Full of really juicy information. And then there's links here to the guidelines, the application pointers. If you're not familiar with what chain of title is, here's a document that the New Zealand Film Commission prepared about that. And there's also 2 sample scripts there of fresh shorts that have been made.
And I'd just like to say, it will greatly assist you to read the documents, specifically guidelines and the application pointers. The application pointers one, you need to read the guidelines so you understand what it is you need to apply, but the pointers is a fantastic document that really very transparently communicates exactly what the assessors will be looking for when they're assessing and selecting projects. For example, at the start of every meeting, the assessors will in fact look to those points that are in that pointer guideline to make sure that everyone's on the same page with what they're looking for. So the assessment
if we go to the guidelines now, actually, we can look at the pointers. It's on page 5, I think.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
On the guidelines, yeah.
Yeah. So
just down the bottom there, the assessment, because people always ask, you know, what are you looking for? And actually, this is it. Like, truly, this is it. So we're not trying to hide our homework. We actually do come back to it, and it's in our reader guides. We constantly are asking readers to have this as top of mind. And then in the panel meetings, we go back to what are we looking for, like literally these bullet points and literally those assessment criteria points. So it's not meant to be a mystery to anybody. And it's kind of, when you've watched a lot of short films, it makes a lot of sense that this is the criteria. They're kind of elegantly simple. And I think sometimes the simplicity of them, it seems like a bit of a red herring for people. They think it must be more complicated than that, but actually when it comes down to it, it's these points that we come back to.
Yeah, and the script is read by a minimum of 3 and sometimes 4 readers. So it's not just one person going, oh, I'm not into this one. It actually is quite a robust procedure, and people can feel quite safe that their script is properly
read. And that sometimes can be, you know, a concern to people. It's like, you know, did anybody read my project? And it's like, yep, we read absolutely everyone. Like, we're really aware of how much effort has gone into putting an application together. And that's a little bit about why we've tried to make this initial part, the stage 1, less sort of fulsome, is that it helps people to actually put their application in, and it's not taking up every hour of your day. I mean, probably will for a little minute, but you know, you're not having to do all of that work that we asked for in stage 2.
So it is quite competitive. One of the questions is how many people apply. So last year,
105 teams applied last year, and we didn't have this shorter application. So I think Jackie's a little bit worried about how many people will apply, but what we really want to open it up so that more people do apply and feel comfortable applying. So,
but the only reason I mention it is so that you do take the time to make your script at the absolute best that you can by reading the pointers and the guidelines. Actually, just before we go to more questions, do you want to talk about the portal, Miriam?
Oh yes, the portal. So what we recommend to you, you can get, it's on the Film Commission website, but you can get through it.
It's also on the Script to Screen website.
Yes.
Show them where the link is.
When you go to applying, what we basically suggest to you is there is a portal through which you'll put all your submission materials into. What we recommend, but to get that ball rolling, you do need to register, which is a little bit of a process, and we really, really I recommend that you do that as soon as possible. For example, not the night before, where you might get in a panic if you somehow, I don't know, some password goes wrong or something. So we want you to get in there and have a look. And the other reason to get in there and have a look is just to get familiar with the layout in there, because we don't want you to go to say all this effort of making a beautiful like document and cover page, and then only to discover that, for example, the director's summary has to be put into a little field and things like that. So you really will be doing yourself a favor if you just get in there and have a look around, get comfortable with it. And the other thing is you can save it as you go, save it as drafts, and only submit once everything's beautifully in there. So you can, you know, you can get in there today and you know, start beavering around on the project, and that would be great. So we really recommend you do that.
Yeah, and because the other thing is that you can share, multiple people can actually input into the application as well, but familiarising yourself is really important. The registration can, I mean, I know that we try and, you know, do that as quickly as possible, but it might take 24 hours, and we have had people that have come in, you know, thinking, oh, just pop it up on the site, it'll be really quick, and then they suddenly, and they've got 12 hours to go or something like that. We've had a few, you know, panicked phone calls over the years. So do your registration now, even if you're just pondering applying, because there's no harm, no foul. Like basically nothing happens, you just register, then you can have a look at the application. People have already done that, they're having a good old squiz at the application, and then you can decide whether you submit or not. And there'll be an email that is sent close to the deadline that says, you know, gives you a sort of there's a few days to the deadline, you know, are you ready to submit? It just helps to remind you that, and that you have to press a particular little button on the portal in the application that says submit, and you get a response. And that's how you know your submission has been received. So that's always a good thing to know. So and we had a few hiccups with that too.
And it's through the portal that ultimately the communication will come back through in terms of if you're shortlisted and things like that. So so it's a really useful.
Good advice, Miriam. Thank you. There's a question here that's come in various formats, so I'm just going to read the one here, but obviously it's on a lot of people's minds. To what degree do New Zealand stories or New Zealanders living outside of New Zealand qualify as New Zealand stories in the context of this fund? Or do New Zealand stories only constitute what happens within the borders? And then there's another question of, you know, if I'm not in New Zealand, can I apply?
Yeah. So, and they're really good questions. Like ordinarily, people from outside of New Zealand citizens or residents who are not residing currently in New Zealand can apply. And they can, well, because of COVID-19 and what's happened with the borders, and because we're a Crown entity, which is a government organisation, we have put forward that people for this round need to be residents in New Zealand. And part of the reasoning around that is if you are shortlisted and then if you are funded, we want people to attend the workshops, and that would be challenging and expensive to have to go through the quarantine process. And it's not, whilst we couldn't say no, you don't need to do that, that's quite an undertaking for just to make a short film. So that's part of the reasoning why we have set that parameter for this round. It's, obviously we're in a hugely unique situation with a global pandemic, and we are really committed to health and safety. So that's part of that thinking as well. We want to keep New Zealanders safe, and we want to make sure that we can make films, but that some of it is also we can travel people within New Zealand. And in previous rounds, we did have some support, or we have had people, say, from Australia coming over and doing our labs. They're New Zealanders, but that's really problematic with the current situation. So I know that that's not what people want to hear, and that's quite, it might seem like a bit of a tough line, but it's really about, at the bottom, it's about health and safety and supporting our well-being, actually. So, and the other thing about content, so New Zealand content, so there's a New Zealand content document, and if you we actually haven't got it on our current 5 on our resources, have we, on the script to screen at the moment. We did have it last year. You can find it on the New Zealand Film Commission website, which is what constitutes New Zealand content. And it can be a combination of, it might be a story that is set in New Zealand. It could be a story that New Zealanders have told. It's a New Zealand team. You have to, obviously writer, director, producer. But you might have New Zealand crew, but it's set in another country. Again, back to the current global situation, that is very difficult in terms of filming something in another country. We're struggling in New Zealand at level 2 and 2.5. So, and we are one of the countries that has the sort of least number of cases of COVID-19. So it's just a very unique situation at the moment. I'm happy to speak more with people about it, to take emails as jude@nzfilm.co.nz, but that's part of the reasoning. So I hope that.
Yeah, no, that was a good answer. Thank you, Jude. Here's some quick fire answers for you. Well, I'll ask the question first. Is first-time director seen as a negative, even if I have an experienced producer?
No. Awesome. It's called, it's all about new voices. No, we'd love that. And with an experienced producer, fabulous. If you're all new, that's cool. This is what it's all about. It's like, come and have an opportunity to, put your best foot forward.
How do you feel about a producer that wrote the script?
I think it's fabulous.
Yes.
That's an answer question. It's great.
Do you prefer the director or the producer to register on the portal?
Producer, preferably. Sorry, I'm
good. Good.
Yeah, I'm hitting the button too quickly. Sorry.
Can I submit a drama doco?
That's it. Has anyone ever submitted a drama doco? That's an interesting one. Like a dramatisation. There's nothing to stop you. I think that it would be interesting to figure out if you had a kind of a treatment scriptment, or whether you had a script. So that would be, I'd really like that person to call Miriam and have a conversation, and then we can have more talk about that. That's a really good question.
What you're saying, like, are you putting it through as a,
yeah, which one are you, is it a documentary that has dramatic elements, or is it a hybrid? I mean, that sounds like a really interesting idea, so I wouldn't want to say
because just so you know, in the portal, like, you either tick that it's drama with the genres, or you're ticking documentary. So it's I guess that's about choosing which.
Gosh, we might have to change the form, but do have a conversation.
We'll figure
it out.
I can think this person's read the guidelines or the pointers, because it's talking about a scriptment, and the attendee is asking, scriptments are new to me. Do you have any advice for submitting creative non-fiction docos? So I guess that's the conversation. Yeah.
You've got the best person to talk to here.
The pointers actually are really good with speaking to that. It's as much as you can sort of indicating what the characters are, the themes, how you see the story playing out. We know with documentary you can't necessarily say, and it is always exciting to have an element of discovery in there. But it's really pointed to, so you have an understanding of what's the framework of your story, what's your themes, what's the stakes. You're still actually asking all those same questions of yourself that we ask of drama, and applying them to something that you'll say, look, this is what I'm aiming for. It is a real life situation. I know that we definitely have these key elements. This part maybe a bit, So it's, we can talk more about that, but the pointers are good.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to write something that is very much like a dramatic synopsis, and that's kind of described in the pointers, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I may have been influenced in some of the description from Sundance. So they talk about prose documents, and so that really helps the reader to imagine the story that you are imagining. It's not just us that are asking for this kind of document. International festivals and development teams from places like Sundance and various other festivals, doco festivals. This is something that's kind of standard practice. Miriam, I think, would probably, if you found an example, she could actually say, yeah, that's a good version of it, or she might demonstrate one herself, because Miriam's got a really amazing documentary background. So she's just so modest. So it's very much it's depicting the story and the character and what happens.
Yes, you're telling it still in an emotional way.
Yeah.
It's sort of trying to resist just getting into that sort of facts and figures.
Yeah.
Whilst, you know, they can be in the subtext and within the story, it's still a story that's going to connect heart and mind, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some more quick fires. These ones are in the guidelines, but I'll ask them here because other people may be interested. Is there a length limit? What length of the short film do you recommend? And
yes,
is there sorry, same subject, but is there a ballpark size for length of script, 5 pages or 10 pages?
Right. Yes. So strictly speaking, in the guidelines, it says the script can be a minimum of 4 pages. That's 4 minutes, up to 24 minutes or 24 pages. So that is, you know, what you are, you know, in the guidelines you're able to submit, no trouble. We do sort of recommend with short films, you do try to aim more towards the 10 to 15, or less than 10 is fine. When it comes to festival programmers, often like shorter can help, because it's about getting more films into, you know, that slot when the audience goes to see a bunch of short films. So if your film is 24 minutes long, that's kind of taking up 2 or 3 short film spaces. So it has to be very strong to sort of win that place within that festival screening slot. So that's kind of one of the simple reasons for that. Also, it kind of can be a budgetary thing, you know. The longer a film, the more expensive it tends to get, depending, I guess, on your approach. But, you know, it's all these things factor that actually, you know, 10 to 15 minutes or less.
Yeah, and lots of writers talk about, you know, the story dictating, and I think that is an important factor. But I agree with Miriam. It can be prohibitive when you get to the sort of the other end when you're trying to show your film, and so, you know, it's contained, and that 15 pages, like below 15 pages, can be a useful guide as a way of having a very you know, great engaging film. It's just a good guide. Like when it gets to 24 pages, as Miriam said, it's got to be really extraordinary to make it work.
And you'd have to be very deliberate on that budget. But also, when you get to stage 2, you have to put in which festival you imagine your film would suit. And some festivals do have a limit on the length. So, you know, if you know your film is particularly relevant to a particular festival, you might want to do your research and just make sure your film is of a length that it could be submitted right at this early stage.
Absolutely. I mean, and there, conversely too, there are festivals that actually, it's a bit like fashion, things change and there are trends. And so sometimes festivals will err on the side of, you know, over 20 minutes, and we have long conversations with people about, you know, why they want to make a longer film, and ultimately it's up to the filmmakers. But again, you want your film to be seen, and if it's something that prohibits it from getting into a festival, or the majority of festivals, then it's something you need to consider.
Okay, so there's a question here about the video that is recorded. One person has asked who else other than writer, director, producer, and the answer is writer, director, producer. And then there's also...
Maybe your cat or your dog, you know, if they happen to walk through shot, that's totally fine. I mean, one of the things we want to get across, because people get really sort of nervous and uptight, and I know that there was some nervous tension about us being on screen tonight, but ultimately we just want to get to know you a little bit, and or the readers do. And so just, it doesn't have to be, in my words, fancy pants. You know, it's just about actually being yourself. It's about talking from the heart and talking about the story. Like, why do you want to tell the story? Connect your connection to the story, what you think. But, you know, I mean, again, we've said, talk about the heart of the story. Like, what's at the heart of the story, and get to know your team, introduce your team, how you're going to work together. And as Miriam said, you know, if you can, have fun. Like, it's not an exam in that sense. And just be yourself. It's not a costume party, but, you know, if you want to wear a onesie, that's up to you, totally. If that's who you are, then feel free. It's about being who you are. And that's the essence of film, I think, too. It's very much about being authentic. That's the authentic version of you as you present your story and your connection to it.
Yeah, so if you feel shy and nervous, be shy and nervous. You know, it's fine. Like, it won't alienate you from the reader.
No, it's not about, it's not an American jazz hands pitch. It's much more, we come from well, we're not into that, basically. It's conversational, you know, and so just, it doesn't have to be a big song and dance production either.
We're getting very close to the end of our time. One of the questions was, can they intercut with moving images? And in the guidelines it says no edits.
No, if you can, well, we understand, particularly if you're in different centres, say you've got a team that, you know, you might have somebody in Christchurch and actually your producer's in Auckland. It's fine to do, you know, obviously we're on Zoom, this is what we are doing, but it doesn't have to, it's not about that, it's about the humans that are making the story.
Cool.
That's who we want to see, that's who we want to connect to.
So can a director be attached to more than one project? Did I ask that question? We asked it about producer, but a director's asked that as well.
Yeah, they can be. You know, they, again, you know, we have had directors one was a writer-director and was sort of on 2 different projects. Again, would have to cross that bridge. Like, good luck to you. If that's, you know, if you get through and you got strong projects, well then, you know, so be it. We'd cross that bridge as we come to it.
There's many combinations that you can have, like writer, producer, writer, director, but producer, director is a no-no. But there is a question, can the director co-produce?
Look, I wouldn't put yourself down as a co-producer. And again, so we talked about this earlier. What happens is it's your craft roles are actually really challenging, and we are asking you to make an exceptional film, and what we find is it's challenging enough to do one role, and if you're the director, we'd really encourage you to be the director. And if you're, writer, we've got a lot of writer directors, and someone asked about being a producer writer. That's totally cool, but it's like be the best of the role that you can be and concentrate on that. And because this is part of short films is progressing towards features, and when you're making a feature, it's really tough to have multiple roles. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and so I think this is very much about team building as well. So it's finding those different roles and people that you hopefully will go on to make future projects with. So kind of having clear roles helps, I think.
Let's try and squeeze in a few more questions. Excuse me, if I did not personally live in the area my short film is set, but the story is personal, and I have consulted with people from the community, is this acceptable?
Yeah, that's great. Especially, you know, if you can show that you've consulted with the community, you know, and particularly if that film progressed and was shortlisted, then we'd want to have some letters of support and things like that. But no, that sounds great. That sounds like a good approach.
If I have submitted a film script to Naho Whakari, can I forward this? Can I submit the same script to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if it hadn't been funded through something like Aho Shorts, that would be great. Please do.
Budget. Does the producer usually work out the budget? We don't need a budget at the stage.
Not at this stage, no. So at this point, we're saying you need to have a bit of an estimate probably, but you don't need to have, you know, it's not a line by line budget request at the moment. We are saying, you know, effectively we're asking you, can you make this film for about $15,000? And if you think it's definitely more than that. Have you got the means to find some other money to help make the film? And yeah, but it's at the second stage that we really need that detailed budget.
Do you think we can squeeze in 2 more questions? Just quick yes or no to this one. Can you co-direct if you work really well together?
Yes, you can. But what I would say, and this is it's an interesting thing, and again, it's really up to people, but it's about director's voice. So if you intend to journey with that director and make feature films with that director as a co-director, you know, we've got wonderful examples of people co-directing in life, in the big world. So if you want that to continue, then that's great.
Okay.
If it's just a one-off, I would encourage you to just have one director.
This is the last question we're going to have time for. If the movie is co-direct, oh no, that's the wrong one. English is my second language. In my 4-minute video, can I use images or videos to support my story?
Well, we've talked again about wanting to connect to the humans. So if you, you know, you're going to be with your team as well, I would encourage you to just do your best, you know, and also not to say that we don't want people to read if that's possible, but if you need to read something, then do that. That's okay. Because it's not about being perfect either. It's just about doing your best in your presentation. Like a lot of the time people get really nervous, they read things or they practice too much. We don't need that. It's fine. You don't have to be perfect.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Miriam. I think anyone who wants to contact Miriam, the email address is freshshorts@script-screen.co.nz. And we are all very much looking forward to seeing your film. Thanks for attending today to this webinar. Well, no doubt we'll get more questions, and we're looking at doing another webinar before the closing of the portal, but do get into that portal early. And
we can update the FAQs as well. Consider we could possibly incorporate some of the questions we've had. So the frequently asked questions might be able to be a document or something like that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and also just to remind too that Miriam's contact details are in the guidelines and the pointer document. So please know that contact information is there.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, she's super nice. So don't be afraid.
We'll try and answer the questions we didn't get to. We got to most of them, but
awesome.
Yeah, we missed a few, so we'll try and answer those even this evening.
Great.
Yeah, thank you everybody for you know, being part of this. We really appreciate you asking your questions and coming along tonight. So yeah.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.